Hello there and welcome to the channel. So this here is going to be a part 2 on our series talking about Agile combat employment. And today we're going to be answering this question right here. Okay, so who is on a contingency location team? One of the first things we've kind of seen is that, there's a lot of airmen, they join certain career fields. They're like, hey, I don't want to be, I don't want to be a war fighter. I don't want to have a gun and be out there getting shot at. Okay, well, that's not the way the Air Force is going. With Agile combat employment and these contingency location teams, we were taking a bunch of various AFSCs and we were said once again sending them out there for 2 to 3 days out in the middle of nowhere by themselves. Okay, so we're going to go over all of this like right here, and hopefully this here kind of give you guys a better understanding of like who is actually on the CLTs. I will say that it has changed a good number of times over the years, so I'll kind of start off with like how we were doing it back in 2020, and then show you guys some of the different changes and some of the career fields that have been condensed and or added. All right, so stick around. So one of our first things to note really is that the forward operating site and the CLTs are going to be separate. So while we might have 3 contingency location teams that are actually attached to the FOSS, their numbers don't actually count towards the FOSS's numbers. So if my forward operating site has 12 aircraft, it'll have their own maintainers, their own security force, LRS, you might have CE folks that are out there, everybody who's there to actually sustain that forward operating site. I can't look at my numbers that are on my CLTs and add those for the overall defense. So let's just say that if I have 10 security forces members, I know that's going a lot, 10 security forces members per CLT, I cannot take those 30 guys and say, yes, they will be here to defend the FOSS. We have plenty of people that are here. No, if I have to send out all 3 of my CLTs like at once, so all 3 of those teams are gone, now those numbers don't mean anything to that forward operating site. So it's super important for people just to remember that your CLTs, while they are attached, they do not belong to the FOSS. If I have CLT1 and CLT2 that are both out there, when CLT3 is back, at the FOSS, the one thing those guys should not be doing is being integrated into their operations. That CLT should be, training, getting their intel briefs, prepping, and getting ready to go back out to actually perform their main function. So the first team we're going to talk about is going to be the contingency location team that we set up back in 2020 as part of the multi-capable airman program. So this right here was a course that was designed to where every single one of the members that you see that are on here, all these AFSCs, they all went through at least 1 week of training, and that's small unit tactics, shoot, move, communicate, and TCCC. So I ended up teaching the SUT and the SMC courses for all of these guys. Of course, obviously a week of training is not enough, but I think that at least back then it was better than what a lot of these guys are actually getting now. So everybody here was actually, trained and somewhat ready to actually, defend that CL just in case it did, in fact, come under attack. As part of MCA, all of our other AFSCs, we were also certified to fulfill the crew chiefs and the POL's job, and actually learned and were certified to refuel those A-10s. So that was something that was like super interesting. However, it was always that thing that, hey, if 3 of my crew chiefs die, cool, I can pull 3 security forces members, they can come over here and they can perform that guy's job. Really looking at it, if 3 of these guys have died, this area is no longer a secure site. I would not recommend aircraft to land here, and we should be getting out of Dodge. So we ended up kind of nixing the MCA portion of a lot of this stuff. So really looking at it, so we have our contingency location commander, and we ended up setting up 3 CL teams. Every time we changed what career field the CL commander was. So for mine, we had a C-130 pilot. For Bravo, it was an A-10 pilot, and for Charlie, it was a Crow, so a pararescue officer. So we did notice that it really didn't matter who was in charge of this, but they were in fact acting as the LZSO, which is something that we'll get into later on as the team start to kind of develop. So we did start off with 9 security forces members. If any of you guys are familiar with the 9-man squad that we've been trying to work on for the past couple of years, this right here worked out really well. The only issue that we really had was that the security forces squadron, the local security forces squadron that was providing these bodies, never had enough. Okay, so they were of course being tasked out for not just real world home station mission, but also different deployments to AFCENT. So 9 security forces members, said definitely not enough. But if you once again think that all these guys are here at least somewhat trained for some sort of small unit tactics, you can kind of put all of these guys into at least some sort of fighting force. So it's not just 9 guys protecting these guys. These guys here will also grab a rifle and jump in. We had 1 IDMT, which I thought was super helpful. TCCC is one thing. However, if we are out here in the middle of nowhere and somebody gets seriously wounded, TCCC is only going to get you so much. The IDMT is able to actually help stabilize those guys a little bit more as we're waiting for rescue to come, pull those guys out. We had one comm member. Comm has multiple AFSCs that are like within it. It's super important to understand that if you have a comm guy that's out here, you need one of the radio guys. So if I have a guy who's good at like, computers, that dude's not going to help. Okay, so it's very important that if we have one comm guy, he's the radio dude. So these are here kind of like, our supporting like members, and these right here, your maintainers, these are guys who are primarily doing that mission. Okay. So we're looking at, being able to conduct, those integrated combat turns, refueling and rearming those aircraft and getting them back in the fight. So the guys who are responsible for refueling is going to be your crew chiefs and your POL. These are like your main two guys here, your main two career fields. These are the ones that are out there making sure that we actually get fuel into those aircraft. So per aircraft, you need at least 3 crew chiefs and 1 POL. So you can see that we are split up enough to where we can do 2 aircraft at the same time. One of the things to kind of note about this is that with my crew chiefs and my POL, when it comes down to weapons, no matter what, even if I'm only doing hot gas, you need at least 3 weapons guys, because they have to be able to safe that gun. All right, there's a lot of stuff they have to do to the aircraft before it can come over here to the crew chiefs for them to actually go ahead and refuel. So while we have 6 weapons crews, the way that it's set up, when those aircraft come in, they'll go and they'll park somewhere. Weapons will go over, safe that aircraft. Then the crew chiefs will taxi it in and start like refueling. So I said, we do have enough here to conduct 2 ICTs, next to each other. However, so once again, just remember weapons. These guys are running back and forth trying to safe the gun, then load the aircraft, and then, unsafe the gun the way get ready for takeoff. The age guy is kind of an addition, okay? So once again, the weapons guys, they were driving the jammers, so those little drivable vehicles actually load the bombs on. So in case one of those things broke, that's what age is there for. So your age guys are there to fix all of your air-ground equipment. Really was not necessary because the jammers didn't break, so we ended up, I think, kind of putting him with the comm guy just to make sure that he had somebody who could cover down just in case he started getting shot at, and he was acting as RTO. So the age guy did kind of move over here a little bit. However, if we go away from the jammers, we use those MOLTs, those manually operated lifting trailers, I believe it's called, then we really don't need the age guy that's out there. But this was the initial team, and we set up 3 of these back in 2020. All right, so now we're going to fast forward 4 years. All right, so the team that you just saw, that was in 2020. This right here was the team that I led in 2024 to go out and conduct hot pit operations out of a civilian airport. So we had 3 of them. CLT Dagger was one that I led. No, not the AFSOC daggers. We just went with Dagger, Rapier, and Cutlass. Cutlass ended up being cut. So we only had to end up having those 2 CL teams. But this right here was the team that I led out, and our mission was to conduct, once again, those hot pit operations. So we have myself as the contingency location commander. Yes, even as a first sergeant, I am able to get out and do some stuff. This time, though, we only had 4 security forces members. Okay, so 4 security forces members. When we are looking at like, oh, well, all these guys here are trained, they were not. Okay, this was a bunch of check the box training. I think lasted for like 8 hours, and these guys were shown like the bare minimum stuff about how to reload like rifles and stuff. It was pretty bad, and if we had actually taken an actual like contact, we probably all would have died. Okay, so like the training was just not there anymore. We have 2 comm guys, which I think is 1 too many. When it comes down to it, we are not going to have our radios blasting the entire time. We're definitely not going to have our comms with the forward operating site or with the main operating base just blasting, giving away our position the whole time. Okay, so we should only have 1 comm guy, and then we're able to actually just get on at certain hours, do those comm checks. Preferably removing that radio, not where we're all sitting at, and then doing those checks. The 6 ammo guys. So here's probably the biggest cluster that we had. Okay, so ammo and weapons are 2 entirely different career fields. Ammo builds the bombs. Okay, so they put the bombs together. Weapons are the ones who actually loads them onto the aircraft. So I had 6 ammo guys that were out there. One, there were no bombs. We didn't actually get any bombs to load for ICTs. But even so, when we're getting munitions out to the CLs, they're already going to be put together. Okay, it is a pain in the ass for these guys to try to come out to even a FOSS to put them together. So that's what they'll stay at. So these guys right here ended up being security forces members. Okay, they had no mission that was out there. I was like, hey, cool, you guys are now going to help run security. So this right here did not make any sense at all. I think when they reached out to the munitions squadron, they were hoping to get some of the weapons guys that were attached to them. Instead, they sent out bomb builders, so it didn't help. Looking over, so once again, so we've got the 3 crew chiefs and the 3 weapons. Once again, so even though we were not actually loading bombs onto those aircraft, those 3 weapons guys, they're going over here, they're safing the aircraft. Once the aircraft has been safed, the crew chiefs will pull it in to get fuel. And then once it is done with that and it pulls back out, the weapons will come back over here and they will go ahead and, unsafe that weapon, get that aircraft ready to fly again. It is important to note that, as I said, with only having three crew chiefs, we were only able to do one where we actually one lane. So even there was a one time where we had 4 aircraft that were down at the same time because 2 were still getting ready to take off. And it was just, a very, very, props to our weapons dudes for running back and forth, getting those guns ready to go. But said, yeah, our crew chiefs were super busy. Said one lane, just gassing and going, gassing and going. Once again, our POL guys were out there. While we did have civilian fuel trucks, they hooked the Viper kit up to it, and they were able to get the gas into the aircraft that way. I want to say the Viper kit being attached to a fuel truck actually slows down like the process, but that Viper kit is in case we're out there with like fuel bladders, and they did send us out with 2 of them. I was like, all right, well shit, they sent us out with 2 of them, let's go ahead and try to get those things working. So I said props to these guys right here for being able to get the amount of aircraft that we had on the ground, refueled, and back in the air very, very quickly. One addition that we had, so once again, so the CL commander has, it's no longer, that pilot, that LZSO guy. So we actually had 2 LZSOs that came out like with us. You might be familiar with the LZSOs. If you look at like, Manda Bay, one of the LZSOs that was out there, he was one of the guys that was killed on the Army LZSOs. So these guys are the ones who are actually setting up the airfield for aircraft to come in, and then they're on the radio talking and guiding those aircraft actually into the area. So remember, if you don't have an air traffic control tower, you need somebody to actually talk to those aircraft, and that's these guys right here. One ended up going home during our exercise for a real world thing, so we only had 1. So the tech sergeant that she was there as the LZSO operating by herself did a phenomenal job. Okay, so things that I wasn't aware of is that a C-130 can sit down anywhere, but our A-10s, they need these different like marking things that are down like on the ground. So she was out there, drove out there and set all those right there like up. And I want to say that there is a difference between like day and night about how the airfield needs to be set up. But when they're out there doing that, that means that everybody else can actually focus on like, their own mission. I think going off in the future, so we had borrowed a vehicle from the host nation guys that were there and given that to her. I think looking back on it, I probably should have given her at least like a 3-man fire team of ammo to go out there like with her, but she was jobbing it. So it said this right here is 2024, how we had set up for our last exercise. And you can see the differences between 2020 and 2024, not just in the lack of training, but also in how we are differing up some of these career fields. So shortly after our exercise in 2024, this team composition here came out. This here is going to be that mission ready airmen. So mission ready airmen have replaced multi-capable airmen. As far as the differences, I really think that just mission ready airmen is really just making sure that everybody here is able to fight. Like I said, I think we've gone away from like everybody else being, like security forces being trained to be like, crew chiefs. Really just kind of focusing on everybody being trained up to actually, fight just in case the CL does get overrun. Really looking at this, so there's been a few changes. One, the CL commander is now going to be a maintenance senior NCO. So he's either going to be a Mass Sergeant crew chief or a weapons guy. Why they decided to have that guy be in charge, I have no idea, but that is how they've set it up. Once again, we have 4 security forces members, and I said I still don't think this is enough. I think we should be having a 9-man squad, depending on how we're going. And who knows, maybe if we're going to CLs that say that we're fighting China, we're out there in the middle of like, an island well away from like the bad guys. Yeah, 4 security forces might be enough. As we start getting closer and closer, maybe we're on mainland China pressing into the country. I might want more than this. Okay, so just something to consider, that hopefully they'll look at your security forces numbers and bump those up depending on, the threat level. Once again, we're sitting at 2 comm guys. I've already talked about how I think we only really need 1 comm guy. And then we have 3 ammo. Once again, still don't know why they keep throwing ammo out there. Maybe that's like, something that I'm just not like understanding or I'm not seeing. But for me, these guys are just security forces augmentees. So we have knocked down our numbers over here down to 2 crew chiefs and 2 weapons. Now, is it possible? Yes. I want to say that like their AFI and their regs state they need at least like 3, but you can do it with 2 in like, emergency situations. Just understand that's going to be a lot of work for these guys, especially our weapons actually trying to load bombs on. So just, considerations for the future. 2 POL. With the number of guys that we have that are here, I really don't think they even need like 2 POL. I really think you could do this with just 1 POL member, just because I'm not setting up a second lane. I'm only doing like the one. And I can tell you that from like the last exercise we had done, 1 POL was kind of like jobbing it, actually watching like the truck itself. The other POL was just kind of, there. So said, once again, if you are going to send 2 POL, one's going to be your primary, one will probably be standing out there like with them. Remember, we're out there on this flat open area with a rifle and just hopefully protecting your other POL guy. And then once again, we have those 2 LZSOs. I think they're looking at one is like an air traffic controller, and I cannot remember the actual other career field. So I'm not an OSS guy, but those guys are filling that LZSO role. So this, I think, is still a great addition, having these 2 LZSOs. I think it's a little weird to kind of knock down some of these like numbers. They're still giving us ammo guys. We still have one more comm guy, and we just do not have enough of a defensive fighting force there. Okay, so this right here is the thing that was, I said, sent out. I want to say summer of 24. I think here's how we're kind of looking at going for the future. Now, the last team that I'm going to talk about is I have no idea what this right here is supposed to be. All right, I want to say this here is a contingency response unit from the National Guard that decided to put this right here on. So they created this team right here, and they said that it was designed to roll off the back of a C-130 to set up a CLT for a few days. I don't know what they're doing with these guys or how this here is like working. All right, so we got 5 security forces members, 1 port dog, no idea what that guy's doing out there, 1 command post. I'm even more confused about why on earth I would need a command post member at a CL. Airfield manager, okay, maybe. Comm, obviously, hey, at least they went down to 1 comm guy. But now I have 1 crew chief. Okay, you don't see any weapons that are on here, so I don't know who's like safing that. I got a load master. I guess he just didn't get back on the C-130 and he got left behind. And then, of course, I've got 1 IDMT. So once again, it said I have no idea what this right here is actually like used for. In a lot of the photos that I was like seeing from like that exercise, it looked like they were setting up for a FARP. However, I don't think that this right here is the way that you should be going for a FARP. I would rather for a FARP insert like a team of like, I don't know, 10 security forces daggers into the middle of like that area, have them like set up. And then, hey, that C-130 comes down, my load master, my crew chief, like, whoever is said, once again, for a FARP, if we're just doing for the Air Force, that forward area refueling point, we're not loading bombs. A lot of those guys can just fly in on the C-130. So my security forces guys can secure the ground, that C-130 can land, aircraft come down, we refuel them, those guys take back off, and then those daggers can disappear back off from the wood line and go fuck some people up. But this, I don't know what this right here is. So I just wanted to throw this here out there. This is a team that was like certified, that did perform in an exercise. I just don't know who on earth decided that this was the composition that was needed. So that covers just about all the different CL teams that at least I've seen so far. Of course, I'm sure there are more out there. Every base is doing like their own thing. I don't think it's really an official, this is the way we're going to do it yet. So we're all just kind of like messing around to see, what works. So with all of the different team setups that I've shown you guys, so it said every AFSC that you see listed up here is that either had at one time or is like, currently being listed as, hey, you have the possibility of going out to that contingency location area. All right, so this right here is why it is so important, and we're talking about the whole warfighter mindset and everything, for guys to understand that, yeah, okay, sure, you join the Air Force, you're like only here for 4 years, you want to do something crazy, you're like, hey, I didn't join the Marine Corps, I don't want to be a warfighter. All right, well, we're not exactly warfighters, okay, so we're going out to these CLs, we're refueling and rearming aircraft. However, when we are looking at a near peer threat, I got to worry about missile attacks, have to worry about a squad or platoon of enemy forces that have circumvented our front line and are now back trying to sabotage the fuel lines. And let's be honest here, if an aircraft is flying, they're tracking on a radar and they see that it lands, then 30 minutes later it takes off, they can be like, hey, something's there. Okay, recon by fire, they're going to launch a couple missiles at it to go take that site out because they know what we're doing. So all these guys that are right here need to be trained up, okay? So training is going to be paramount. That is the one thing that we lack. Right now, we are just throwing everybody out there on these exercises and being like, yeah, they can do a FARP, ICT, hot pit. They can do that mission. Of course they can do that mission. It's their stateside thing, but they're not doing it with an OP4. Can these guys do this mission while also surviving? Okay, there's a reason why these teams are so small, and that is because if we only lose like 15 to 20 enlisted guys, Air Force is like, that's fine. Okay, we get more. I always joke, say security forces, we graduate like about 105 like every week, so we're kind of replaceable. Okay, so you don't see any officers out here, do you? So like I said, so these are just, once again, those AFSCs that might get picked to go out to a CL. So if you see your career field like on here, just understand that you might be doing a little bit more than just sitting back at a FOSS or sitting at a main operating base. So prepare yourself and get comfortable for being uncomfortable. So I hope this right here it helps. If you guys have anything else, let me know. I'm definitely going to conduct do up some more videos talking about how a contingency location team actually works big picture. I know there's some videos that are out there where the Air Force is like, here's how it works. But once again, they're not talking about with it being opposed. So I will definitely be covering that later on. So if you guys got anything for me, put it down in the comments, shoot me a message. Once again, here for you guys. Later.